Now, just as many other countries are at the moment, Germany is taking an economic hit due to vastly increased energy bills caused by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Germany in particular has relied on Russian gas, but relations with another autocratic regime have also come under scrutiny. China has become Germany's biggest trading partner in recent years, but Beijing's increasingly assertive behavior is being watched with concern in Berlin. Here's Germany's Economic Affairs Minister and Deputy Chancellor Robert Habeck speaking after meeting fellow G7 officials on Thursday.
The naivety toward China is over. And I can also say that for the German government, the times are over when it was said trade, no matter what the humanitarian standards may be. We should no longer allow that. This means that we will show a more robust trade stance through Europe towards China.
Robert Habeck speaking there. Now let's bring in Eric Bradberg. He's Senior Vice President in the Europe practice of the Albright Stonebridge Group and a non-resident Senior Fellow at the Atlantic Council. Welcome to the day. Mr. Bradberg, it seems that this recognition has been a long time coming. Wasn't this policy of hoping to change China through trade always a bit of a fallacy?
Perhaps, although I do think historically it made sense to engage China, trying to get China to become a responsible stakeholder, trying to play by the rules in the international system. But I think it should have been clear way earlier that that wasn't the decision that Beijing made, that China instead has become more authoritarian and has frankly engaged in practices that are not fair, such as, stealing intellectual property, engaging in buying up strategic assets to siphon off technologies, but also bullying countries like they've done recently with Lithuania, for instance. So I think it should have been a wake-up call much earlier, but I do think that wake-up call is now coming very, very loud and very clear.
So it is coming now, but what's different now? Is this just the fallout from Russia's war in Ukraine? Is it increased Chinese assertiveness, let's call it that, if we're looking at Taiwan, or the disruption caused by the COVID-19 pandemic?
Yeah, I think it is a sense, I think, that we are less naive anymore as Europeans. And I think certainly Russia's war in Ukraine contributes to that. And I think, if anything, it has underscored our dependence on that authoritarian country in terms of energy. And I think that also has served as a reminder of our dependence in a range of areas, including technology and raw materials, on another authoritarian country like China. But I think we also learned that during COVID, when so much we learned about our medical supply chains were dependent on China and China's willingness to engage in this kind of mask and vaccine diplomacy that we saw, oftentimes spreading disinformation in Europe about the virus or about vaccines. So what I think we are seeing now is a willingness to begin to put values in front of business. And I think both governments and companies are beginning to learn this. And it will be very interesting to see, especially in Germany, as Germany conducts its new national security strategy and its new China strategy, what will come out of that? And if that will be a change in attitude towards China that will also lead to businesses beginning to take different decisions about investing and trading with China.
We're coming to a particular business in a moment, but first I would like to ask you that Germany is facing a double hit here, losing cheap energy from Russia at the same time as it's saying it's going to wean itself off a major trading partner. Will Washington accept that that will take a lot of time?
Well, I think the United States has certainly encouraged and pushed Germany for a number of years to reduce its dependence on Russian energy. And we've certainly seen in recent years, certainly during the Trump administration, strong criticism of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, although the Biden administration, of course, tried to compromise on that issue in order to rebuild relations with Germany. I think Washington is confident that Germany is taking this energy crisis very seriously and is taking very real steps to reduce that dependence on Russian oil and Russian gas. And I think in many ways the U.S. has also been supportive of those measures, promoting LNG exports to Europe, helping to broker trade agreements or help Europe import energy from the global markets. Because I think there's a concern in Washington that this energy crisis, should it get really severe this winter, could also have political ramifications, could lead to maybe Europeans being less willing to continue to support the efforts to assist Ukrainians. But at the same time, I also think there's a little bit of a concern in the U.S. that by cutting off dependence on Russia too quickly, that could actually drive up the energy prices in ways that could lead to higher gas prices in the US, which could make the Democrats vulnerable in the upcoming midterms. And I think that's why you saw, especially the United States and the G7, come out with this oil price cap idea instead as a way to limit Russia's oil revenues while still making sure that the prices don't go up.
I want to come back to single companies that you mentioned earlier. German car maker Opel today announced it is putting its plans to expand its business into China on hold. Is this change already a sign of business feeling the wind of change?
I do think we hear from businesses, and by the way, it's not completely new. We heard all the way back in 2019 from BDI, the German Industry Association, calling China systemic competitors. So it's something that businesses have been aware of, but I think now we're seeing companies actually take steps to reduce and diversify their dependence on China, looking at other potential players both in the region and elsewhere around the world to have manufacturing and to have supply chains. But you are seeing some companies, and China is still a very big market. You're seeing companies continuing to invest in China, but I think they're mainly doing so because they want to localize production for the Chinese market in China, kind of ring-fence China and their business there, and then diversify to other markets. I think the big change is really also coming from government, where I think in the past you saw, certainly during Chancellor Angela Merkel, the German government very much encouraging companies to go to China, to trade more with China. Now you're seeing, and we heard that from the remarks from Minister Habeck, you're seeing the government saying, encouraging companies to diversify and saying that they may not get the type of financial support from the government for their businesses in China that they have been used to getting. So that is a shift not only from companies, but also from the government.
Now, Germany, of course, being one of the, if not the leading economy in Europe, are you seeing evidence of Germany taking on a more assertive leadership role, as the Chancellor and other leading politicians say, is needed?
Certainly, by virtue of being Europe's economic powerhouse and a leading trade country, Germany has a special responsibility on these issues. And I think we have seen a lot of progress have been made, especially at the European level when it comes to addressing trade challenges, especially stemming from China. There's been a lot of progress in recent years on stepping up foreign investment screening, export control restrictions, making the European procurement market more safe from unfair competition, and addressing things like illegal subsidies. So there has been progress on that sort of trade defense area, and Germany has certainly been very supportive of that. Where I think there will need to be more work going forward, and where Germany will play a key role, is to think about building new trade relationships, making sure that we don't become protectionist or isolationist, but that we are investing in diversifying trade relations. And I think that means doing more with countries like Japan, Australia, Canada, where we still need to ratify a trade agreement. So here, I think, is where Germany can really play a key role. And I think actually one of the question marks is where the U.S. is and the Biden administration in its trade agenda. We saw recently the U.S. imposing these new restrictions on tax credits for electric vehicles that could have a bad impact for German car companies. So I think in many ways, it's not Germany, but it's actually the U.S., the question mark when it comes to global trade.
Eric Bradberg, thank you.
Thank you very much.